Pre-Algebra, Lesson 8-5, Estimating with Percent. All right, the easiest kind of estimating with percent is when the percent is 10%. In order to find 10% of something, all you do is move the decimal point back one place. Since there's no decimal point in 98, it is assumed to be at the end. So we're going to bump it back one place. And our actual answer here is 9.8. That's not even an estimate. But since they're looking for an estimate, we're going to go for something that is compatible with 10% and near 98. So we'll say 10% of 100, and we'll say the answer then is 10. So whenever you're dealing with 10%, you just bump the decimal point back one place. That's the easiest kind of estimating with percents. Now this one is really kind of related to estimating with 10%. Instead of 10%, we have 5%. And let's pick something close to 21 that ends with a 0 for the purpose of estimating. So we're going to call that 5% of 20. Well, 10% of 20 is 2. So we back the decimal point up one. So if 10% of 20 is 2, well, 5% is half as much as 10%. So 5% of 20 has to equal half of that number. So 5% of 20 is 1. Now, you probably already discovered I can't just give you a formula for how to figure these questions out. You have to think about each one individually and how you're going to best attack it. This one is still related to the 10%. Again, let's take our, because it's 20%, twice as much. Let's take our 42 and call it 40. We like something with a 0 on the end when we're dealing with tens of percents. So 10% of 40, you just bump the decimal point back one, is 4. So 20% of 40, that's got to be twice as much because it's 20% instead of 10%. So that's got to be 8. Again, you have to think through it. This question looks quite different. It doesn't have a percent in the question. They are asking you to find the percent. What is 14 out of 26? Like if you shot 26 free throws and you made 14 of them, what was your percentage for making your free throws? Well, 14 out of 26, that's not really easy to turn into a percent, but something really close to that, and I hope you can recognize this. 26 doesn't really have very many factors, but it is 2 times 13, and 13 is super close to 14. So we're just going to call 14 13 and keep our 26. And I hope that you can recognize that that is 1/2, which you know as a percent is 50%. Okay, for this problem, you're going to have to recognize something different. 33%, I'm hoping that you recognize that as being 1/3, or very close to 1/3. We need a number that's divisible by 3 to be a compatible number. 25 is not divisible by 3, but 24 is very close to 25, and it is divisible by 3. And I'm hoping that you know 1/3 of 24 is 8. That's just 24 divided by 3 is 8. So 33% of 25 is roughly 8. We have a similar kind of a situation here. 25%, you should know that that is 1/4. And we need this 33 to be a number that is compatible with this 4 right here. So 33 is not divisible by 4, but 32 is very close, and it is divisible by 4. So we're going to do 1/4 of 32. And again, that's just a division problem. 32 divided by 4, and that equals 8. So 25% of 33 is roughly 8. Okay, so the percent that we have here is 21, and that's very close to 20. So we like multiples of 10 for percents. Let's take our 49 and change it to something ending with a 0. So that would be 50. So 10% of 50 equals 5. We just bumped that decimal point back one. So therefore 20% of 50 would be twice as much. 20 is twice as much as 10. So twice as much as 5 would be 10. So 21% of 49 is approximately 10. Okay, you could go a couple of different ways with this one. 30%, it is multiples of 10, and I like that. But I'm also seeing if you want to deal with this with tens of percents, the one thing I don't like about that is that 36 is pretty far from 40, but it's okay. So we can do 30% of 40. 10% of 40 would equal 4. So that means 30% of 40 has to be 3 times as much, would be 12. So 12 is our answer. But I want to work that a different way for you also. I kind of like the fact that this 36 is divisible by 3, and 30%, it's pretty close to 33%. So I'm comfortable calling that 1/3 of 36. And we should know that 36 divided by 3 is 12. And so either way that we did that, we got 12. And it's possible to get different answers that are close, and they're both reasonable answers. In this case, they both came out to 12. So there's more than one way to do a lot of problems. Okay, let's tackle a dreaded word problem. Number 19 says, Felicia spent $8.78 of her $10 weekly allowance. About what percent of her allowance did she spend? So since we're supposed to be estimating, let's go ahead and call this $9. And this is already a nice round number here, so let's call that 9 out of 10. And that's a basic percent that you ought to already know, which would be 90%. That question is so easy because it's out of $10. You could actually give the exact answer very, very easily. But 90% is a good estimate. Question number 20 says, the Longview School Marching Band has earned $402 of the $510 they need to buy new uniforms. About what percent of the money do they still need to earn? Okay, let's go ahead and take 402, and we're going to call that 400. And let's take 510 and call that 500. So they have earned 400 out of 500. And you can, when there are zeros top and bottom, you can cross them off until at least one number doesn't have any. So 400 out of 500 is the same thing as 4 out of 5. And that's a percent that you should know off the top of your head, that is 80%. Now the question is just a little tricky here though. They asked about what percent of the money do they still need to earn. So they have earned 80%. And so what's left to earn? Well, 100% would be the whole thing. So 100 minus 80 would equal 20%. So 20% is what is still left to earn. Question number 21 says, a restaurant bill for dinner is a total of $49.60. Estimate the amount to leave as a 20% tip. So I'm hoping you see that this $49.60 can be $50. It's very close to that. And then 20%, that's a nice round number. 20% of 50. And that's a 10, a multiple of 10. So 10% of 50 equals 5. So 20% of 50, twice as much, so it has to be twice as much, would be $10 for the tip.